Netflix docuseries about Sean Diddy Combs is making headlines for its never-before-seen footage of the music mogul in the days before his arrest. Now, Combs is threatening legal action against the streamer for airing the unauthorized footage. Behind the series is Combs' longtime rap rival 50 Cent and director Alexandria Stapleton, who sat down with NBC News' Chloe Malas ahead of tonight's release.
It started with a question no one expected. How did that footage even get out? The material was raw, unsettling, and shockingly intimate. Scenes of Sean Diddy, Combs in the days just before his arrest, still recording himself long after federal agents had seized most of his tapes. Viewers saw private strategy talks, vulnerable moments, and tense late-night conversations with his legal team, all caught on camera. And the wildest part, this secret footage somehow ended up with 50 Cent, who placed it directly into his Netflix documentary. Journalists refused to reveal how the tapes emerged. Legal experts speculated endlessly, and fans felt like they were watching something no one was ever meant to see. What made it even stranger was how natural Diddy appeared, filming every detail of his life. He had lived with cameras around him for decades, controlling his image, curating how the world saw him. But this time, the camera betrayed him. The documentary hit Netflix at the exact moment Diddy faced the harshest storm of his career. Locked away, stripped of his usual authority, unable to push narratives or respond publicly, he watched his legacy unravel from a distance. The series, produced with Curtis, 50 Cent, Jackson attached, immediately set off a firestorm. Critics questioned motives. Supporters accused Netflix of partnering with a longtime rival. Diddy's team argued the footage was stolen. Netflix insisted everything was obtained legally. But the real shock wasn't the legal drama, it was what the footage showed. Viewers were confronted with a man who appeared overwhelmed, paranoid, even defeated at times. He asked for guidance. He barked orders. He tried to strategize while the walls closed in. To many, it was the first time Diddy looked genuinely afraid. The entertainment world froze. Industry insiders whispered privately. Longtime collaborators publicly distanced themselves. Some claimed the documentary exposed what people had been scared to mention for years. Others called it a hit piece crafted at the worst possible moment. Diddy's team erupted instantly. They released a fiery statement calling the series a disgrace, accusing the producers of weaponizing stolen private moments. They sent cease and desist letters to Netflix. They insisted the footage was never meant for release. But their outrage couldn't stop the wave of curiosity or the conversations the series triggered. 50 Cent, for his part, rejected claims of revenge, pointing out that he'd even hired Diddy's own children for previous projects. He framed the documentary not as hostility, but as something the culture needed, a public reckoning that forced uncomfortable realities into the light. Still, the tension between the two men, long simmering, now felt like it had exploded into a full-scale battle. The footage reshaped everything. It shifted the narrative. It made even Diddy's supporters question how much of his story had been hidden behind wealth, charisma, and influence. And just when viewers thought they had seen the worst of it, more revelations surfaced. What came next in the documentary pushed the entire Diddy-50 Cent feud into uncharted territory and exposed secrets no one expected to see. As the documentary progressed, the tone shifted from shock to deep concern. Hidden among the footage were private strategy sessions that Diddy likely assumed would never see daylight. He spoke to his lawyers in stern, urgent bursts, ordering, demanding, correcting, as if he were directing a movie rather than preparing for a federal trial. A man once celebrated for total control now appeared unsettled, packing through conversations with a tension that made viewers lean forward. The filmmakers paired these moments with interviews from former friends, collaborators, and industry voices. One of the most revealing was the appearance of Diddy's former Bad Boy co-founder, someone many viewers had no idea even helped build the empire. He described how the company began, how power shifted, and how early promises fractured over time. It painted a picture of a world behind the glitz, one governed by pressure, loyalty, and the unseen rules of success. Then came the clips everyone talked about. Diddy greeting fans in Harlem, smiling awkwardly while acting overly cautious, stepping back from hugs, whispering about needing a bath after touching too many people. To the public, he had always been the confident mogul. But these candid moments showed discomfort, almost disgust. Something he seemed to forget was being recorded. 50 Cent later said this clip mattered because it captured the real person, the man behind the branding. But the biggest shockwaves came from testimonies. Former band members, associates, and people from Diddy's inner world began sharing experiences, some describing uncomfortable environments, others hinting at manipulation or pressure behind closed doors. These weren't wild internet rumors anymore. These were people with first-hand ties to Diddy's orbit, speaking with conviction. Diddy's team dismissed everything instantly, calling the interviews baseless. They insisted 50 Cent had a personal agenda. They argued the documentary ignored decades of hard work and focused only on sensational claims. But the public wasn't convinced. 50 Cent pushed back harder. He pointed out that many celebrities stayed silent for years, even though they knew far more than the public ever did. He claimed the industry protected Diddy because he was powerful, and speaking out meant losing opportunities. He insisted his role wasn't to destroy Diddy, but to reveal what others were too afraid to say. The tension escalated as the documentary began revisiting old controversies, lawsuits, whispers from the 90s, long-rumored incidents involving high-profile figures. One interview dove into the infamous East Coast, West Coast era, raising new questions about how Diddy navigated that turbulent time. Another explored allegations tied to private gatherings, with attendees describing atmospheres that felt more like power tests than parties. The narrative was changing rapidly. Diddy no longer looked like the man running a billion-dollar empire. He looked like someone whose entire world had been built on delicate pillars, now shaking under intense scrutiny. And through it all, the footage he filmed himself kept revealing more vulnerabilities. But the documentary wasn't finished. The next segment uncovered a world of influence, control, and secrets that went far deeper than anyone expected. The third arc of the documentary dove into the most controversial territory: allegations about Diddy's private events, long-circulated stories about exclusive gatherings, and the culture of influence surrounding them. Interviews from former insiders began drawing a consistent picture: environments where boundaries blurred and power dynamics pulsed beneath the surface. Some described feeling pressured. Others recalled seeing people comply with situations they didn't want to be part of. The filmmakers handled this section carefully, avoiding sensationalism. Instead of dramatic music or exaggerated claims, they allowed stories to unfold in calm, uncomfortable detail. Attendees talked about loyalty tests, subtle manipulation, and the unspoken expectation that you didn't question the man in charge. Even those defending Diddy admitted he commanded a presence that made people think twice before refusing anything. These accounts mirrored claims from past lawsuits, whispers of environments where influence was used as a form of control. The documentary framed these stories not as final truth, but as pieces of a larger, complicated puzzle. Viewers were left to decide what they believed. Meanwhile, 50 Cent continued adding his perspective in commentary clips. He argued that Diddy's power came not just from fame or money, but from decades of positioning himself as untouchable. According to 50, the industry enabled this by protecting him, turning away, or pretending nothing was wrong. He said his involvement in the documentary was about finally confronting a culture of silence. Critics pushed back, claiming 50 Cent was turning a long-standing feud into a personal victory lap. But he responded by pointing out that he'd placed Diddy's children in his own scripted shows. Proof, he said, that the rivalry wasn't as personal as people assumed. He also mentioned strange interactions between him and Diddy in the past, moments where Diddy made comments that left him uncomfortable. He implied this documentary wasn't revenge, but a way of drawing boundaries and telling the truth. This part of the series also highlighted Diddy's immense influence in the entertainment world. For years, he shaped careers, launched artists, pioneered trends, and built a brand that blended music, fashion, business, and media. His presence was overwhelming, so much so that challenging him felt impossible. Now, for the first time, his control over the narrative was slipping. Interviews with former associates described how Diddy operated behind closed doors, how he monitored behavior, managed loyalty, and expected silence. Though he denied wrongdoing, these stories suggested a pattern, one where questioning him could leave someone isolated or pushed out of opportunities. The documentary made it clear, this wasn't just about legal trouble, it was about the culture that allowed certain behaviors to go unchecked. And as all of this played out, Diddy sat confined, watching the world dissect his life, unable to respond, unable to stop the conversations, unable to control what came next. Industry veterans said the release of the documentary sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Some artists privately admitted they were stunned by the footage. Others refused to comment at all, worried about being pulled into the unfolding storm. The entire landscape was shifting, and the final part of the documentary was about to take everything even further, into a territory far more complicated than legal cases or industry gossip. What happened in the final act didn't just expose Diddy, it rewrote how the world views fame, power, and the illusion of control. The final part of the documentary confronted the collapse of Diddy's carefully crafted image. Viewers saw a powerful man slowly unravel as private videos revealed his frustrations, anxieties, and desperate attempts to keep control of a narrative slipping through his fingers. He spoke sternly to his lawyers, urged them to fix things, complained about strategy failures, and expressed fear that everything he had built was on the edge of crumbling. This wasn't the confident mogul the world had admired. This was someone terrified of losing everything. The documentary then explored the public reaction. Social media exploded. News outlets dissected every frame. Fans argued about whether the footage revealed truth or simply exploited a vulnerable chapter in Diddy's life. Meanwhile, celebrities stayed silent, many of whom had once celebrated him publicly. That silence spoke louder than statements ever could. Interviews with analysts suggested the situation represented a larger cultural shift. For decades, powerful figures in entertainment operated with near-total immunity. Their fame protected them. Their influence shielded them. But the modern world, connected by social media and driven by transparency, no longer allowed narratives to be controlled from behind closed doors. One moment in the documentary reinforced this idea. Diddy filming himself immediately after the federal raid. Instead of laying low, he recorded more content, perhaps believing he was too big to fail, too iconic to be touched. This footage, meant for no one but himself, became the very thing that unraveled his empire. 50 Cent appeared again, reflecting on how he had warned the industry for years, only to be labeled a troublemaker or a hater. Yet now, the same people who mocked him were privately acknowledging the truth behind his words. It was a shift he described with a mixture of frustration and vindication. The documentary closed by posing its central question. When two conflicting versions of reality collide, one built by influence, the other by evidence, who decides what the truth really is? Diddy's team prepared an appeal, determined to challenge the narrative. They insisted the series was unfair, out of context, and biased. They argued he was being targeted because of his stature. But the public had already seen too much. The footage had left a permanent imprint on his legacy. 50 Cent, meanwhile, made it clear he wasn't backing down. He said the culture needed accountability, that power in entertainment had gone unchecked for too long, and that silence had allowed too many stories to remain buried. Whether people viewed him as a villain or a truth-teller, he didn't care, because the conversation was finally happening. The final scenes showed a world divided, fans questioning their idol, critics analyzing every detail, and the industry bracing for more revelations. The documentary didn't claim to have every answer. Instead, it exposed the fragility of fame, the dangers of unchecked power, and the reality that private actions can become public nightmares in a single moment. As the credits rolled, one truth remained undeniable. The Diddy vs. 50 Cent saga wasn't ending. It was only entering its next chapter. And the biggest question now is simple: what comes out next, and who will be exposed when the next layer of truth breaks open?